So, are you ready? This is the moment I've been waiting for 2 decades. 2 decades. For someone who doesn't know what a decade is, it's a long time. But here we go. Kirsten Rian is an independent photography curator and writer. She has curated or coordinated more than 375 photography exhibitions internationally and picture edited or written for over 80 books and catalogues. She is an accomplished multidisciplinary artist, working prolifically as a writer, painter, installation conceptual artist, and musician, reflecting a commitment to community both in her immediate orbit as well as in the greater international context. Her most recent international exhibition was in Iceland and incorporated video, painting, words, and music. Her work with refugees and immigrants in war-torn communities and human trafficking survivors explores how storytelling and sharing through creative mediums often allows the hardest and most necessary aspects of human history and experience to be remembered and, in fact, honored. As a musician, she has recorded 8 records and acted as a producer on others. To say that our next guest has an angelic voice would be cliche. To say that she has been my favorite guest over the past 25 years would not effectively convey my affection and sound pedestrian at best. Because of this, I find it difficult to properly introduce her to you. However, I am not the only one who feels this way. College Music Journal reflects my opinion in her talent, once noting of an in-June release, "The effortlessly gliding vocals of Kirsten Rian are showcased here, and as she croons to striking effect, she makes us melt." How appropriate, as the #1 Fabulous 5 song for 1994 on my show was "Melt" by In June. On the list for several months, no other song has had the distinction for even half the amount of time. Butter is the consistency of these musical vibrations that reaches our ears and bathes our souls in silky, viscous ether. She is widely published as a journalist, essayist, and poet, and the author of 3 notable books. Her anthology of Sierra Leone poets and their accounts of the Civil War is in every classroom in Sierra Leone and was released in this year. She was the author of the weekly column The Alphabet of Light for Daylight Magazine, is the poetry editor of the Oregonian newspaper, and is the recipient of numerous artists' fellowships and grants. And I digress because I have to stop with all the accolades and say hello to Kirsten Rian. Hello, Kirsten.
Hi, Mark.
My goodness. How are you?
I'm good, and I am so touched that you still think about In June all these years later, and I just have to give you the biggest thank you for that. But also, as you know, you were one of our biggest supporters nationally 20 years ago, 25 years ago, and just indebted to you in so many ways. So thank you. It's wonderful to be talking to you again.
I'm so happy to get in touch. I guess the last time we spoke was 20 years ago in 1995, and that was like just at the peak or just at the birth of the internet. And I wasn't really using it at the time, but I knew, I had a sense that someday it would be a useful tool and maybe to be able to reconnect with people. And recently I was, the whole thing that kind of led to this is I've been downloading my cassette tapes of the old shows and converting them to digital format. And I came across this show where, I interviewed you. And I said, oh, I got to get in touch with Kirsten, and I got to go on Facebook or something, Google her name, and eventually I'll find you. And I did. And I'm so happy.
I am too. Thank you so much. It's wonderful you have those shows going back all those years, because that's an archive of not only music as it was then, all the way carrying forward to now. But I imagine you have some interesting conversations with a lot of different people who went on to do interesting things.
I'm keeping track. I put it in a spreadsheet, and I'm at over like 180 artists that I've interviewed.
Wow.
It's a lot of people.
Well, yeah, and it says a lot about you too, though, and your commitment to independent music and to just that conversation that I think happens between musician and listener through the music, but then also you taking it one step further, in your forum at the radio station to actually, talk and get inside the minds and have a conversation back and forth. So thank you for doing that all these years.
And thank you for being you. It's an amazing thing. For me, it's a hobby, and I come down here every week and play a bunch of new artists, and you are definitely one of the best artists that we've had here. You're fresh new music and a new perspective on everything. It's wonderful to feature acts such as yours.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
We were trying to schedule an interview for last week, and you couldn't do it because you were on a hike. I just want to know how was that trip?
Beautiful. I live in Portland, Oregon, and we are just surrounded by, within an hour and a half, it's the Columbia River Gorge and tons of hiking, and the Oregon coast is an hour and a half the other direction, and we've got mountains and huge urban park and trail system right here just on the outskirts of Portland. So it's good. It's wonderful.
Do they, out here, they converted a lot of the old railroad tracks into hiking and biking trails? Have they done that out there?
Not so much. No, a lot of Forest Park has been, and that trail system has been around for a really long time. And I don't know its origins and how it was carved out, and maybe some of it was conversions, like you're saying, but that hasn't happened in recent history.
Interesting. You've been through hell and back and still seem so optimistic. You've been through quite a bit. I don't know if you want to go into details, but I was wondering how you keep it all together.
How do any of us keep it all together? I think that, just so I don't leave your listeners hanging, my son was born with some significant health issues, and then Dave, my husband and father of my two children and the guitar player for In June, passed away suddenly 4 years ago. And then a few months after he passed away, I was diagnosed with a head tumor and had a long surgery and long recovery. But I also, it's not easy to navigate that. But I also think it's life, and I don't know anybody, especially at our ages. I'm in my late 40s, and none of us escape, I don't think, without at some point in our lives. And sometimes I think it gets ganged up, but I think it's figuring out that balance and how to just get through it. And some days are just, they're white knuckle days, and you just, that, and you're just going to get through it. But it's cyclical, and it's up and down, and I'm very lucky in that I have incredible people in my life and friends, and we're all helping each other through everything. I have one of my best friends is really struggling with cancer right now, and so I sit with her at chemo, and we just kind of help each other through.
And was she there for you during your battle?
Hugely,
yeah.
hugely so.
So you're right. It is cyclical, and during the lowest of lows, do you kind of look forward to the highs?
Yeah, I think focusing, not even looking at the highs, but focusing on gratitude, things that are working.
Yep.
And sometimes it's hard to find them when the dark and edgy things are piled up, but it's there, and that helps me. And ever since Dave died, it sounds silly, but there's this little shift, like if things are difficult and you're like, I have to do this or I have to do that, just even something as simple as switching it to I get to. Like, I get to be alive and I get to go to the doctor.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It sounds
Yeah.
simple, but I don't know, for some reason it works for me.
I don't think I ever got the chance to actually talk with Dave. I think on the both interviews that we've done, I only talked to you. But I was really saddened when I heard about his passing.
Yeah.
But here we are.
Here we are.
We get to talk again.
Exactly. Yeah.
For 12 years, you were the co-owner of Rust Records, an independent record label at the time when independent record labels were just starting to kick off, like Ani DeFranco's Righteous Babe Records.
Right.
And you were the lead singer, co-founder and producer and songwriter for an award-winning and nationally recognized alternative rock band In June. Were there any other labels, or other bands on your label?
No, it was just us. It was really a vanity label we set up with us and set up all of our music through BMI. And like you said earlier, you know, pre-internet days, sometimes I look back on that so fondly because it's just, we made like 500 calls a week.
Wow.
And to track the record, to music directors and to people playing the music like you. And I mean, you probably remember that. And then if it was doing well and if it was charting, we would get faxes.
Now,
I would request, do you remember that? I would request, like, please send me a fax for our promo packet with it showed that we were on, like, the top 5 or whatever.
And now it's so different, yeah.
It's a different beast, but it was very, you know, analog in its approach. It was very sort of guerrilla marketing, but it was so hands-on and it was so much work that when I look back, it was all these independent musicians and labels. I don't know. It was a different kind of approach, I think, and not that there's anything. I think it's just a different tool now on the internet. I mean, the possibility of reaching so many more people and having that kind of impact is fantastic. But it was literally one station at a time, and we had one of those long distance phone cards. You know, with a good per minute rate, and that's how we did it. So,
I imagine the feeling of elation and joy was probably more accentuated when you were doing the hard work like that, calling people rather than sending out one email to 500 people.
Right.
And getting that feedback was probably much more rewarding.
Well, I remember I had a little spreadsheet that I would make, that I had the radio station, the call letters, and then the phone number, and then I had it by the weeks that I would call, and if on the phone I found out we were getting airplay, a little star would go in that box next to, you know, I mean, it was just so it was very thrilling. And the same thing, we'd get our weekly CMJ mag, or it wasn't even I mean, we got the magazine, but there was something that you got, sort of the trade publication that listed that week's top 35 listings for all the radio stations, all the college radio stations, and we would just pour through that and just circle wherever we saw In June, and it was a different, there's just something more tactile about that than checking your email, you know?
Yeah. There's no spam mail there. My goodness.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I look back on that very fondly, and I'm glad that we did. I mean, we did it all on our credit cards, and we just kind of went for it. But I don't have any regrets. I'm glad that we did that.
That's great. That's great that you have no regrets for that.
Yeah.
And now you're in a quintet rather than a duo. You released My Mother's Songs in early 2010, your 7th album, and it's a jazz project. I should have introduced you to Arthur, who does a show before me. And ironically, he was doing a show before me back in 1995, too. He's still here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Wow.
He does Musical Myriad, is a jazz program. And you're doing that now, and you have a new album coming out, right?
Yeah, so the quintet, So after the band broke up and everything, I needed to step away from music for a while, and I couldn't sing for like 7 years, and I needed to figure out a way to return, to find my music and my voice again, and my roots are in jazz. I'm classically trained and grew up in a house where jazz was being played every day, and that's still how, like, we would do sound checks for In June, and I would pull out a jazz standard. And so that was separate, that identity was so separate from my life in the indie rock world that it was a way I could get back out and gig again and play around town and play with a whole different sensibility and types of musicians and different actual people. And so I did that for a few years and put out a couple records, and then and that My Mother's Songs was the last one that was that. And then Dave died, and then I had my head surgery, which made singing actually physically, I couldn't do it. So I stopped that for a couple of years, and the record that I've been working on now with writing tunes for it's back in sort of the In June vein in terms of it's original, and it's more in the indie rock, but stripped down. So jazz is still something I love, and it's still something I do whenever I can. But it didn't give me as much, I don't think, as writing my own songs did, and just that. I mean, that's my heart is in sort of alternative and indie rock, and so working on a record is slow going, but it'll get there.
And it's going to be out this fall?
That was the goal. We'll see how productive the summer is.
Okay.
That's the hope.
Do you think you'll be able to? Will you tour, or just stay locally or regionally where you are now?
I'm not sure. I think I will figure that out once I get the record made and figure out distribution and how I'm going to do all that. And then, just take it one step at a time. My life is about to enter a different chapter because Dave and I had 2 kids, and one is almost 15 and one is 16. Oh. And so it's different from having, that's the other thing that was going on where it made touring and putting out records more complicated when you have 2 toddlers. But they're spreading their wings and launching themselves out into the world, and they'll be away at college here in a very few short couple of years. So a lot more time and space will open up then as well.
I've got one going off in a couple of months, going off to college.
Oh, my goodness. And you said he plays in the jazz band, right?
Yes, yeah. And throughout high school and middle school, he was in the jazz band. He loved playing jazz.
What does he play? What instrument?
The guitar.
Oh, wow.
It's amazing. And just watching the whole band, they're really well practiced, and they do amazing things with all the songs they've played over the years.
Yeah. Wow. Well, and now, you're one step ahead of me. So you're entering that phase of having the kid move out into the world. Yeah,
it's going to be an amazing adventure, I'm sure, for both of us.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. So you're currently working on the solo album. You've led creative writing workshops both domestically and internationally in locations like post-war Sierra Leone and refugee relocation centers in Finland, and with human trafficking survivors, using creative writing as a tool for literacy and peace building, and locally is a volunteer language facilitator for non-native speakers. You're a recipient of numerous artist fellowships and grants. Can you tell us a little bit more about the benefits of creating creative writing?
I think that sometimes if you look at someone and you say, tell me about the worst thing you've ever been through, you're not going to get anything. But if you say, write a poem about hope, or write a poem with the word window, which actually is a really effective, tiny, simple little prompt, but it gets people to look back and forward through,
Oh.
It's a way, creative writing, I have found, is a safe way, it's a bridge to be able to get our stories out. And I really believe that the world is a better place if we all tell our stories and witness them each other. In that way, I think we help. We see common threads. We see that we're all, wherever we are and whoever we are, that we're all living the same human experience of loss and gain over and over again. But I think when we share those bits and then we also witness them and hear them, there's a kind of shouldering of it that together that I think is really important. I think it's certainly something we learn from. I think it's how we can learn from each other, but I think it can be also very healing. And so because I'm a writer, that's how I make my living primarily. It's just something I started doing a long time ago and have stuck with it ever since. And it's just very powerful to sit in a room or in a circle and have people write and then share. And then it's just, the creative writing is a way to, it sparks discussion and sparks connection. And so, yeah, it's very important to me, and it's something I've done for a very, very long time now.
It seems like such a wonderful healing process for some people. What led you to kind of go over and do that?
To be honest, it started back in the In June days, and at the end of it, when the band ended and the marriage ended, which was unexpected, and my son, like I mentioned earlier, had a lot of medical issues, and it was really scary, and it was really intense, and I knew that I needed to figure out a way to keep perspective and to keep it from becoming sort of myopic, and I needed reminders of a bigger world and of this idea that we're all having difficult things and we're all going through things and we're all scared and we're all doing the best we can. And so I called a refugee relocation center kind of around that time and asked if I could volunteer. And that started it, and one thing led to another, and then I sort of became known for this work and in the region, and was given some grants to go do it overseas, and then have ever since done it here. And most of it is on my own time. Most of it is I volunteer with Multnomah County Library and do the language facilitation groups with them. And I get as much out of it as I hope I give in some way back. But it's certainly been really rewarding, and it's very, very important. And it's just been a way to learn about how to be a person too.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure the rewards are mutual on both ends.
Yeah, it's incredible. I feel very lucky.
And
very lucky.
We are very lucky to be talking with you again. It's amazing. 20 years since we talked, and I swear you sound no different than you did 20 years ago.
Well, I look different. Well, I'm just so, like I said earlier, I just think that, we never know. We do these things we do in our lives, right? Whether it's host a radio show like you or put out records like I did 25 years ago. And the older I get, the more I think that our job is not necessarily to know what the outcome of all that is going to be, but it's more to just trust that we do these things, and we don't know how they're going to resonate out. And, especially with Dave being gone now, I mean, when we were doing the record label and putting out In June records, we were just doing that because we were in our 20s and it was what we wanted to be doing. But now that we have these records, and for the kids as well, that they're important markers of their dad and of their parents' history. And I would say the same thing I was telling my two kids about, we're actually listening right here, but about you in particular. I said this to you in email, but I wanted to say it, in person, in as much of a person as we can do over the phone.
Yeah.
That, you were one of the very first supporters of In June, champions of In June, and it gave us that confidence in a lot of ways to just sort of keep going. And I know you've had that role for a lot of other musicians too. And it's a community process that we all do together. And I'm just so grateful. It's so remarkable to be talking to you now, but I really want you to know how significant you were way back then. It was huge, and just that you would even listen to the record. We were always shocked that anybody would even listen to the records, let alone then play them and then play them for weeks. And
yeah, it's amazing. It's so kind of you to say that. I've been doing this quite selfishly, actually, because I enjoy coming down here and listening to new music every week, and I'm hoping that people listening also enjoy that as well. But it mostly for me, I've always felt kind of selfish in that way. But you were the epitome of what I wanted to do, is play something different. And that's been the theme of the show, of this radio station, for so many years. And you're amazing. You are definitely something different. You can go to pop stations and listen for hours and every song sounds the same. But you are unique, and we love listening to your music.
Oh, thank you. It's funny when I listen back to that stuff. We were just learning as we were going, but it's definitely not perfect music, but we had our hearts behind it. So there's that.
Well, I will find a way to post this on the internet so that you can hear the old interviews. I've been posting stuff to SoundCloud lately, and that's a way to get it out there. So I'll definitely get your interviews up very shortly.
Oh, I'd love that. Thank you so much, Mark.
Kirsten, I feel like I didn't really touch on any of your writing. You sent me your CDs, and you sent me some of your books, and I'm not a big reader. I don't read well, but I took the time and I started reading through some of your books, and amazing poetry. I think the one that caught me the most was Eyes Like Mine. And yeah. I'll read that later. I don't want to take the time now, but I will read that later in the show. It really touched me. And so thank you for calling. And
thank you for having me.
We will stay in touch, I hope, and we'll have you back on the show when you got the new album out.
That would be fantastic. I'd love that. And thank you again, Mark, so much for all these years.
All right, Kirsten, stay on the line, okay?
Okay, I will.
Kirsten Rian, formerly of In June, and now a solo. She's worked with the quintet and doing some jazz music, and we should have Arthur give her a call next week for Musical Myriad on his jazz show. But right now, she's on Something Different with Marky Ramone. Thank you for listening. You're listening to 90.1 WECS Willimantic, a community service of Eastern Connecticut State University. And I should now play for you the number one Fabulous 5 song in the history of Something Different. Here is, this is like the epitome of everything that this show stands for. It's something different. It's got musical melodies and angelic voice, and it's got noise. It's got that distortion and noise in there that we love. Here is, love that distortion. Feedback. Love that feedback. And here we go. Here is Melt by In June. Dave Weigel and Kirsten Rian from so many years ago, but it's so relevant today. Stay tuned. We'll be back. 90.1 WECS.